Welcome to another session in the Learning, Equity, and Power, or LEAP series, presented by the Center for the Study of Social Policy. My name is Anand Sharma, and I'm a Senior Associate at CSSP, and I'll be your host for this session. Before we get into conversation with our wonderful guests, I want to share just a bit about CSSP and the LEAP initiative. CSSP is a national nonprofit that works to achieve a racially, economically, and socially just society in which all children and families thrive. To do this, we promote policies grounded in equity, support strong and inclusive communities, and advocate with and for children and families marginalized by public policies and institutional practices. We seek to transform ideas into action, and LEAP is a new initiative to help us do just that. During this session and throughout this series, we've been highlighting and encouraging learning about what it takes to advance equity and build power in communities. And we hope that you'll join us and think about how these lessons might help you to more powerfully advance equity in the communities that you care about and serve. Given CSSP's longstanding commitment to supporting community, policy, and systems change, we're very excited to continue our LEAP series with this session, Authentically Engaging Community, Lessons from the California Endowment's Building Healthy Communities Initiative. CSSP has had the pleasure and privilege of being one of TC's learning partners over the past few years. And through this series, we've enjoyed the opportunity to share some of the insights we and other learning and evaluation partners have discovered alongside TCE and its many partners across California. For those who aren't familiar with the work of TCE, I would encourage you to check out past LEAP sessions, but I also wanted to offer some brief context. Building Healthy Communities, or BHC for short, is a signature program of the California Endowment that has combined 10 years of continuous funding to 14 historically disinvested communities with related state level and regional policy campaigns and coalition building. Since 2010, BHC has invested over $1.75 billion and contributed to more than 1,500 wins through its innovative approach to health improvement that encompasses both social determinants of health and power building to promote systems change and advance health and racial equity. BHC is characterized by a unique blend of neighborhood-level engagement, which you're going to hear a bit more about today, combined with media strategies to shift the public narrative toward a deeper understanding of systemic inequities and the potential of people power to transform them. In this session, we'll hear some perspectives and lessons learned on the topic of authentic community engagement from two of the many community stakeholders who have played an essential role in BHC. There's no way we could ever tell all the lessons of BHC spanning 10 years and in the entire state of California, but we are very fortunate to be joined by two wonderful experts, Ms. Cherie and Cherie, who can share just a few of their own stories and lessons from their tireless work in East Oakland. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce our first guest, Ms. Cherie. Ms. Cherie, how are you doing today?
Oh, good afternoon. I'm doing fine. I'm Miss Cherie, and I'm a resident leader with East Oakland Building Healthy Communities. And I've been with the initiative for about 10 years. And so it's been a great experience.
And Ms. Cherie, how long have you called the East Oakland community home?
At least 37 years. So this has been a wonderful enterprise for me to be involved with. Uh, East Oakland is a very diverse community. It's consisting of African Americans, Latinx, Native Americans, and working class people. And I love the people, the music, the artwork, the environmental justice and criminal justice reform, the housing rights, and people trying to address the general social problems in our community. The ability to hear from the community members themselves and engage with them has been a part of the great things I've seen that have happened, and people's issues are being lifted up and they are being able to address them, and it's brought insight and opportunities to assist the community as a whole. Building healthy communities has brought me to the table with different people whose voices are often not heard.
Thank you so much for Ms. Cherie and for sharing just a little bit about your East Oakland community and some of the things that you love about it. I would love for you to share, since you have been involved with BHC for pretty much the entire time it's been an effort in East Oakland. How did you first get engaged with the work of BHC, and what are some of the roles that you played in that work?
Okay. Well, at the suggestion of Causa Justa Just Cause, a housing rights organization, which I'm a member, I became engaged with BHC near the beginning of the whole process. I participated in the steering committee as a resident person and a leader with the real team, the resident engagement team, and as well as I continue to work with the leadership group and the leadership body with EOBHC.
And Ms. Cherie, before we get into some of the lessons and things a little later, would love for folks to get a chance to hear from you. What do you think makes a healthy community, and what are some of the biggest barriers that you see to health equity?
Well, for me, power building has been important in this whole process. One, right now, we have issues of displacement, health disparities, racism, environmental pollution, voter engagement, and those were key questions that people in the community, not just me, but other residents raised, and they fought for and felt these were important for us to address. The creation of the Healthy Development Guidelines and in the engagement with East Oakland Congress of Neighborhoods to assist in passing laws around blight, working in coalition to assist thousands of people to sign up for Obamacare were some of the things that happened. And so for me, that was part of the energizing part. We also helped with working with people around nail salon issues, health workers who are working there, and to make sure that they had healthy working conditions. We also work with EONI, East Oakland Neighborhood Initiative, to craft a whole tool around environmental impacts for the community. Some of the things we're still being challenged with are displacement, which is causing a large portion of the huge homeless crisis we have here in East Oakland, especially for African Americans. But also that we have to realize there's a link between displacement and people being pushed out and the number of schools being closed.
Thank you, Ms. Cherie, for sharing a little bit about your community and the way that, again, this is just one story and one example from many of BHC, but I think it's a great illustration of how many different community members and stakeholders really were pushing for a very broad view of what constitutes health equity and what makes for a healthy community. So we're going to come back to you in a little bit, Ms. Cherie, but I want to bring in our next guest, Cherie Tang. Cherie, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. It's a blustery day here in Oakland and warm.
Well, I'm out in Washington, D.C., so I hope you can send some of that warmth out our way because it's been getting quite cold. But it is so good to see you, Cherie. I've had the pleasure of getting to know you in many different roles, but you are here today representing your role as a East Oakland Building Healthy Communities Learning and Evaluation Team member. And I would like to give you the same chance to say a little bit about yourself and what are some of the things that you really appreciate about the East Oakland community.
Oh, wow. I've been in Oakland for 30 years now after having immigrated to this country as a young teenager. I became a young organizer at 17 and moved around the country. What I love about East Oakland is the feistiness. East Oakland residents are feisty, they organize, they speak up, they demand things, and what's rightfully and democratically belong to us. I love that. I love that history of East Oakland. We have a lot of resident historians like Miss Cherie, John Jones III, who can speak about where this community has been. And there's just so much love. There's so much love for this community. Even though for someone who may not live here, when you come to East Oakland, you may see closed storefronts or abandoned buildings, folks living on the streets. But beyond that, it's a spirit of hopefulness, of optimism, of fight back. We belong here in East Oakland. That is really palpable. And the great food, the great people, the music, the art, all the things Ms. Cherie talked about. And recently, Black Cultural Zone is doing an adult skate every Sunday, right? Folks complain that there's not much to do in Oakland for recreation, for outlet. So that's slowly starting to change.
Thanks for sharing that. Both you and Ms. Cherie have given folks a nice little sketch of some of the things that you love about the community. And I think it would be helpful for folks to hear a little bit more, Cherie, about the specific role you played and as a learning and evaluation team member. So if you don't mind sharing a little bit about that.
Yes, we were very honored to have been invited and included as part of the East Oakland Building Healthy Communities effort. As a part of the learning and evaluation team. It's been a 6-year. So we came in probably in year 5 of the 10-year journey. So one of my greatest teachers of the East Oakland BHC story has been Ms. Cherie, telling and sharing with us the early experiences of a building resident power initiative. So as the team member, team lead for the learning and evaluation team, our job was really to support the reflection capacity of the residents as well as the organizers in BHC, right? We can be involved in a lot of activities, just doing things, right? But if we don't stop occasionally and step on the balcony of our own lives to look at what's happening, right, we will miss a lot of the morsels, the tastiness, the kind of the flavor that gives life color and excitement and meaning. So as part of the evaluation team, we really saw ourselves as kind of supporting the organizers first and foremost to build power. So we had a lot of different roles, disrupting the traditional notions of an evaluation team that is somewhat or somehow can be objective and neutral, right, quote unquote, and somehow stand arm's distance apart and observe and make judgment. No, we said no. This initiative is to build resident power, which is really disrupting the power dynamics, right, in supremacy and dominant culture. So we realized that the role of our team is to really lift up and to value what's happening, to look for all the things that's bright and promising and powerful, and to say, whoa, look at that, learn from that, listen to that. So really blurring the traditional lines of an evaluation team. So really our job was to build capacity, to help document, to take notes, to tell the story, right, over time, to be librarians, because people come and go out in and out of the initiative. But our team has had a 6-year run, so we hold a lot of the memories of the initiative. So we distill, we facilitate, we cheerlead. Sometimes we're invited into being strategists. We build relationships, we build bridges, we hold the space. So in all those ways, I feel like learning and evaluation needs a reframe in building power efforts, that we're not this traditional experts. I don't see myself as an expert. I see myself as someone who has expertise, and I have a boatload of things to learn, especially from organizers like Ms. Cherie.
Thank you, Cherie, for just sharing more about your role and the orientation you take to learning and evaluation, because I hope folks who are tuning in can see Ms. Cherie has been a resident leader and doing organizing and just tirelessly working in the community. But you've played an interesting role as well in viewing communities as true learning partners and viewing the, as you said, the blurring of that role between evaluator and those who are considered the people who are involved in the organizing, the power building. And it's why we were so excited, Cherie and Ms. Cherie, to kind of bring you together, because it is a different type of conversation about how philanthropy, how evaluators can partner and orient themselves in these types of initiatives. So thanks for laying that out, Cherie. I want to go back to Ms. Cherie and just open it up for, now that our folks know a little bit more about the two of you, Miss Cherie would love for you to start us on a conversation about what are some of the biggest lessons learned or insights about what it takes to authentically engage community.
For me, one of the most important lessons I learned was to listen not just with my ears, but with my heart, uh, and realize that people's experiences are real and valid, and that the community needs this, that the community members are actually the experts, and that there are issues around criminal justice reform, affordable housing, health, uh, uh, access to healthy foods. All of those are important. And when they lift up their voices and we hear, and foundations and other folks here, they have to understand those are legitimate uh, things that affect the community, and that the people here are the authors of what happens with their faith. Foundations and organizations need to have residents as decision makers. Uh, for me, that's important.
I appreciate that, Ms. Cherie. I want to stay with you a little longer. In some of our past conversations, you've spoken about some examples of the ways that foundations or organizations in general can help to create more inclusive and accessible processes and spaces. And I would love for you to share, an example of some of the ways that you all tried to do that.
Okay. For us, it was important for us to work with folks around making sure that people had stipends, holding meetings at times that people can access them. A lot of times, people are holding meetings at the middle of the day. Residents and community members cannot get to those meetings because they're working. We need to make sure those meetings are held at a time that's also affordable for them to be able to meet, whether it's at night, in the afternoon, late afternoons, or the weekends. But we need to meet people where they are. If we don't meet people where they are, then we're doing them a disservice. So one of the things that we also found that was important is making sure that we give residents a stipend, but also give them a little reward for being there, because they are valuable. So I think that a lot of people want to give people pens and cups and plastic bottles. That doesn't work for the community. Right now, people are suffering and struggling. So give people a gift card, something that will be meaningful to them, something that applicable to their needs, and especially that recognizes their time and energy. But I think also that people need to be included on every level around when we have people uh, allocating money, that people need to be in on the decision-making portion of what happens and where that money goes, how it happens, and also what the impact for them will be in the community. People need to be able to decide their own outcomes, not what we want as the outcomes from boards and foundation and organization. We need to ask the people what they want to see as their outcomes.
Ms. Cherie, I wanted to stay on that last point around um, asking people what they want to see as the outcomes, because you mentioned at the start of this conversation some of the very broad ways that you and other community members were thinking about what makes for a healthy community. And I know you've all spoken before about the importance of meeting people where they are and kind of translating the language. So can you share a little bit about that? Because I know it was kind of a growing process and a learning process for everyone involved in this work about meeting people where they are and really being able to be in the same conversation.
I think it's important too that we realize that when we come here with sometimes that organizations and foundations come with high and lofty goals, which are good on some levels, but you have to understand that people know what they need. And when you say that, when you come to a meeting with them, make sure you have translation, and make sure that you have food, because a lot of times if people are coming and they're coming after work, they might be hungry, they might have children with them. You need to make sure that all their needs are being met. You need to meet them where they are. And we realize that sometimes people don't always govern the same way we do. We found out, especially when we were working with some of the Vietnamese community, that people operated in a consensus form. We were not familiar with that, but they were willing to talk to us and explain to us how they operated and what was important to them. So we were learning new ways by talking to people, listening to them, and letting them decide what was important. So we knew, we don't want to live in a cultural isolation. We need to be able to talk to people where they are and where they want to be.
Thanks, Ms. Cherie. And I want to throw the same question to Cherie about just some of the biggest lessons learned and insights that you have about what it takes to authentically engage community, particularly given the kind of hat you were wearing as a member of the learning and evaluation team locally in East Oakland. Oh, Cherie, you're on mute.
Thanks for that great question, Anand. As I think about what I've been learning from East Oakland residents and serving in this role of learning and evaluation, first of all, is a commitment to decolonize our practice, right? The practice of learning and evaluation and its history, I think, has turned off a lot of people. In East Oakland, I heard the story of residents feeling really disoriented and just not flowing with the process of developing this foundation prescribed theory of change. And many, many hours were spent in creating this theory of change. And in the end, I think the community got really turned off to the process. And they felt like the endowment had come in to wave, a big bag of cash in front of nonprofit organizations and residents, and led with the promise of money. I think the first job is to really decolonize these relationships and these power relationships and these power dynamics. When I spoke with Ms. Cherie for the first time, we sat down for a long time at a coffee shop. And I remember Ms. Cherie saying to me, "Where's all the money?" I said, "I don't know, but maybe we can find out." Right? I mean, this is a foundation-driven initiative that promised a lot of resources. And yet, what's happening with the money was opaque. So I learned early on that resident leaders will ask the toughest questions that the client, right? The foundation is the client for the learning and evaluation, as well as the community. And the foundation, I think, did not like that, did not feel like it was the community's business or it wasn't their job, whatever. It was opaque. It was not transparent. But the community leaders will ask the toughest questions that we may or may not be able to answer. So there are 5 lessons I would say to my foundation colleagues. Number 1, practice what you preach. If you say something that the community ought to practice, I want to see you practicing it first and modeling it for the rest of us and sharing transparently your own lessons learned. Number 2 is flip the script on who's the expert. So I'm with Ms. Cherie all the way. Community folks know best. They live there every day, and they know what the issues are and where we need to go and who to talk to, when to talk to them, how to talk to them, right? So flip the scripts on who are the experts. Number 3 is open up the money and be transparent with your funding, because that is your core business, foundations, is to give out money. So if you want to build resident power and really transform lives and material conditions, do it in ways that have not been done before, because what we have seen before are not working. So open to participatory modes of grant making with the community, using community intelligence and guidance as wisdom. Number 4 is don't prescribe your strategies. Come to East Oakland, come to any community that you're interested in working, right, to transform. Have open dialogues with community members about what the strategies ought to be. And listen. And the 5th is to not be defensive, right? Enter into this partnership with your open hearts, with your open minds, with all the resources you got, and the community will meet you where you're at and help you with whatever bright ideas you're coming to the community with. The community will make those ideas better, brighter, and more implementable. To my learning and evaluation colleagues, I want to ask you all to learn to show up more authentically as your full selves in all your glory and all your shadows. We are humans, just like everyone else. And to build these real, true partnerships, right, can only happen if you show up as your real deal.
Cherie, really appreciate you offering those reflections. I know you've spent a lot of time working in and with communities and with lots of different foundations and organizations, so really appreciate your insights. I wanted to just ask you a little bit about, because both you and Ms. Cherie spoke about some of the challenges of when foundations and other organizations are really trying to authentically engage with communities, and the importance of being less prescriptive in a lot of the lessons you mentioned. In some of the past conversations in the series, we've had TCE leaders as well as other evaluators speak about the messiness of this work and the growing pains that took place. And as you know, Cherie, one of the other evaluators termed the pivot to power, when it was this kind of point where the initiative really moved from seeing power as just a means to affecting positive and important policy and systems change to being valuable in and of itself. And I'd love to just hear some reflections, Cherie, about kind of how you experience that and some of the bright spots in terms of a foundation working in a different way and taking on another orientation, knowing that there's much more work and it's a long learning journey.
Yeah, I want to use this opportunity to say, I'm working with several foundations. I've worked with many foundations in my 20 years of consulting. I have so much respect for the California Endowment. They have put down a true commitment to racial equity and racial justice. They not only put out a statement when it was trendy to do so, they have moved their entire board towards this commitment and the entire staff. I admire them for their honesty, for their truthfulness in admitting what they don't know, haven't done well, and all the things that they're proud of, right? So I feel like it's about this radical honesty that is grounded in love, that is grounded in history and context and strengths of the community that they built the Building Healthy Communities effort, and now going to take it into its next 10 years to name power building as the center. I love that. I have so much respect for that. And at the same time, I think it is still messy, right? People are messy. Humans are messy. The road towards liberation and freedom is messy. There's 3 steps forward, sometimes 2, 4, 5 steps back. So I just want to be in this moment to remind myself and all my friends and beloved colleagues that we got to hold on to our hope like a superpower cape that we wear every day. Because through that messiness, if we can stay honest and stay truthful and loving to ourselves and each other, we're doing all the right things.
Thank you so much, Cherie. I want to bring Ms. Cherie back into the conversation. Ms. Cherie, would love to hear any other thoughts you have on either what Cherie shared or just this topic of authentic community engagement. And then I'd love to hear what's a hope that you have for the future of your East Oakland community.
All right. For me, it has to do with building power, and the ability to build power has the ability to affect change. And for me, that has been a long process. But I also have to realize that maybe the foundations don't realize when they come in with these huge terms, the theory of change, the narrative, and a lot of people were turned off about these terms, couldn't figure out what are these people talking about, and people left the room and didn't return. So we need to make sure that we have things in the context where people can understand them. In fact, one of the things I insisted on was them to have a dictionary of terms in the meetings when we came, if you're going to bring these terms so people can understand them. We also have to understand that when you want to engage people, we need to be willing to let them talk about what they see as solutions to their problems. And we need to let them address these issues out loud. A lot of times people are afraid to address the issues. And we need to let people address their issues where they can be heard, where they can make the greatest sense, and so that others can engage with them and let them know that they're not by themselves. A lot of times people think they're in this fight alone. We need to make sure that we come together and let them understand they are not in this fight alone, that when we have these agendas, people set these agendas for the meeting, but are the community members helping to set those agendas? Are they the ones who are helping to say, this is what we need to see included in what we're discussing, what we want to see happen? So all of those things are very important. And if we don't see it and it fails, then it's on us. It's on the groups and the organizations and the foundations. We need to go back, be willing to go back to the drawing board. Be willing to say, I need to make some changes. We need to make some changes. And how are we going to make this happen? And you make it happen by talking to folks here in the community. If not, we're going to continue to see the crisis we have now. For my hope for the future is that we can change things, especially here in Oakland. What we're seeing is a huge amount of displacement of communities, and especially African Americans. The recent fight for the last few weeks and today is that public schools are being closed because people are being pushed out of the area. And people don't see the correlation between displacement and the lack of students in schools and people becoming homeless and then realizing, oh, we have to close schools, but why should we close schools? Education is so paramount. So my hope for the future, especially for African American children and for our community, is that we move forward and understand there's racial bias. They were talking this morning on TV about the fact that the discrimination and buying land, securing housing, affordable housing is directly affected by covenants that are, even though they say that they're gone, those housing discrimination covenants are still here. But I know when we work together, when we pull together, we can change things. And that's my hope for Oakland, and that we continue to not give up the fight, that we keep working and we move forward, and we can do this.
Thank you so much, Ms. Cherie. Cherie, I want to give you the same chance. Any closing thoughts, and then would love to hear one hope that you have for the East Oakland community.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's really about power. The power to do three things. Number one, the power to set the agenda for East Oakland. Second is the power to shape our own narrative and tell our own stories and not have other people say what East Oakland is or isn't. third is that with the narrative and the agenda setting power, we can actually set policy. So that's my aspirations for East Oakland. I want to remind myself, others, that this work for health equity is generational long, right? It's generations long. It is not a sprint. It's not something that's going to happen next week. So along the way, I want to remind us that we have to lead with joy and love so that young people see themselves in this fight and that they see that they can do it. And it's not grinding ourselves to a pulp, thinking we got to boil the ocean with 3 matches, but that we find joy in each other, in the relationships, and fall in love with one another, to lift each other up, to remind ourselves that we're in this journey together. We're not going to be free 1 minute before the other. No matter how much money is in your pocket or which foundation, we're not going to get to the better tomorrow without each other. So we're in this together, and we got to have joy along the journey.
Cherie, that's a beautiful way to close out the conversation. I want to thank you, Cherie. I want to thank you, Ms. Cherie, for your time, your expertise, your commitment to this work, and sharing a little bit of the love that comes through so clearly that you have for your community in East Oakland. And I just want to remind folks that these are just 2 perspectives, 2 people sharing their lessons and insights of many, many more people who were in East Oakland and across the VHC communities and across the state of California. And just always have to acknowledge that these lessons, these successes would not be possible without literally the efforts of thousands and thousands of people across the state. So we're grateful for the 2 of you, Ms. Cherie and Cherie, for sharing a little bit of your community, your love, your experience with us. And we hope that we've piqued people's interest to learn more about lessons and insights from the many, many experiences and studies and reports and stories that come out of the work of building healthy communities. So thank you both for your time today. Thanks to everyone who tuned in. We really appreciate your interest in learning equity and power. And we hope that you've gotten some inspiration, some ideas, and we've piqued your curiosity to learn more. And we just appreciate all of you in the work that you're doing in your own community. So thanks so much for your time, and take care.
Thank you, Anand.
Okay, thank you so much.